Hey everybody, this is my sharing video on UML diagrams. So let me get my screen up here just a second. So what I've tried to do here is make my learning and understanding of the UML diagrams a little bit more organized so I can kind of see how they're going to fit into my schedule a little bit better. So I've gone through here. I pretty much used the same template that was given to us, but I did make a few changes to it as far as the way that your personal schedule is set up. So as you can see here, I have my personal schedule, kind of how things are going to lay out. And then this week, I tried to go through and understand the various types of UML diagrams. That's really what I dedicated last week to. And I'm just now getting around to doing my sharing video, so I apologize for that. So regardless of that, what I've done here is made a Google Sheet document, and then I've actually gone through and made different parts of that document for the different diagrams. That's supposed to have something in there. I'll fix that. They're supposed to look more like this, where each one actually has an explanation of what it is and then an example of it. So I just wanted to kind of go through here. This is something that I actually drew while I was at work one day, and then I just scanned it. Some members of my group were nice enough to take this and actually put it into some software, so we have an actual copy of it that everyone can edit and take a look at as well. So that was kind of just a rudimentary drawing that I made. But essentially, we are going to be doing our best to produce a calendar scheduling app. And so I went through here. This is kind of our use case diagram. There's going to be a manager, and essentially the manager needs to have full authorization to every part of the system. And you can see that by the lines that are being drawn to the different parts. The manager will need to be able to see a calendar and create calendar events on that. And when he hits submit, those calendar events need to go to the workers. And so that is why the workers have authorization to also look at that. Scheduling is only going to the manager because we don't want the workers to go in and edit their schedules. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in just a second. As we go down here, if the workers receive their schedule and they cannot make a shift, or maybe something comes up and they would like to be able to trade that with another worker, they will have authorization to go in and propose changes to the schedule. The reason that's so important, and that's why we have this line going back up to the manager, is we need the manager to be able to see those changes, but at the same time, we don't want the workers to have the authorization just go in and say, okay, here, the schedule's changed. So if they propose changes, it'll go down. The manager will get a notification that says, hey, this person is asking if they could change shift with so-and-so. And then the next part down here is the manager will actually give approval to that. So I know it looks fairly simple, and I actually believe that it is fairly simple, but we want to make sure that the manager and the workers have the appropriate credentials and appropriate authorizations. And so the big part of our app here is we want workers to feel comfortable to make changes as necessary, but we also want those changes to go to a manager for authorization. So he can kind of keep everything in line and make sure that there's the appropriate coverage in the store. And I believe this use case diagram does a good job kind of describing that. And I mean, we as a group have gone through and taken a look at it, and I don't believe a lot of changes have been made to it so far. So it's actually fairly simple and fairly easy to understand. Use case diagrams, I've gone in and kind of just put in what they are and what the different parts of them are. So for example, if I go back here, the manager and the workers represented by these little stick figures, they are the actors. And so that's really important because we need to, from the very beginning, before we start writing any code at all, we need to go through and say, who is going to be using this app and what should they be seeing? And I believe I kind of explained that as far as, you know, who should be able to do what here. And I'm not going to go through all of this necessarily, but I just kind of went in here and typed this up so that once we get a little bit further along in our app, I could be able to go in here and add some more information. All right, so state diagrams. You're really trying to go through and show every different state that your app could possibly be in, which I haven't got to that point yet. I spent this last week kind of going through and refreshing my memory on UML diagrams and things like that. So this picture here is just an example. However, I do hope that by the end of this week, I will have created all of these diagrams for my own app, at least to the best of my knowledge. And then I'll be able to submit those to my team so they can take a look at them. Let's see here. So really, you're just trying to logically step through the app and decide what things are going to do, how they should work. If you do one thing, it's supposed to do this, but what if the user decides they don't want to do that thing, or maybe they exit out of something? We need to know by these lines how that's all going to kind of cooperate with each other. We'll talk a little bit more about that once I get more into it. Again, this is just an example, and it's pretty similar to a use case, or excuse me, to a state diagram. Other than, let's see here, it can include more. It's basically a more complex version of the state diagram, because we want to go through here now and not only understand the logic, but also start to not necessarily program the functions that are going to be happening in our app, but at least put some names in of those. And it's kind of funny because I believe the word right here is German, but anyways, it's still a good example. And then that takes us to the diagram I think most people are familiar with, which is the use case diagram. Those are really nice because it helps you visualize things a little bit more, because you're actually going in and saying, okay, if there is an address field in my app, I need to think exactly what needs to be in that field. A name, a number, those have to be strings, a city, a zip code, so on and so forth. And then in my previous programming class, the reason that I was most comfortable with the class diagram is because that's actually where we went in and started writing the name of the functions. And then that allowed us to say, okay, that's what we're going to call this function. What does that function need to do? And then I could look over it with my team members, and we could kind of actually start to write out the code for it. And system level and unit tests, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I will once we kind of have a rudimentary, I guess, alpha version of our app, and we begin to test it a little bit, then I'll come back in here and kind of do some more with this. But yeah, I mean, you guys can read it if you want, but more than anything, they're just tests for the app. So ideally, what we would like to do is get one thing working in our app. So for example, with our app, let's say a manager creating a calendar. Before we go on and create the whole rest of the app, we want to go in and test just that single unit. That's really important, because we could go through and create an entire app, and then when we go to run it, it's going to fail at step one, and we don't want to do that. So what we're trying to do is break up the different functions and parts of our app into separate units, so we can go through and test those individually, dependent of the entire system. Which of course leads up to an integrated testing, where you would take maybe part A, part B. So maybe the manager creating the calendar and then submitting that to an employee. So that would actually be two separate units, but we want to see how those are going to integrate together. So that's about all I have on that. I will go more into depth on that the end of this week when I do another one of these videos, and I actually have some better examples with our specific app. But for the main thing I wanted to do is just show for my team, myself, and the professor especially, that this last week definitely wasn't a waste of time. I did go through and try to organize this, so hopefully it'll make it easier for myself and my team to kind of take a look at things, if it'll be helpful to them or not. And then hopefully prepare this so once we get our app going a little bit more, I can come in here, add our own examples. If we have any problems, document those, and just kind of have all that information in one cohesive place so that I can access it, the professor can, my team, so everybody knows where it is. So anyways, that's about all I have. I know that my team has been doing a pretty good job on their meetings, which I haven't been able to attend, so I need to figure that out. But I do know that we have been working as a team on some of the other diagrams. So our big thing this week is we need to get the majority of those completed, get them up on a place where everyone can see them and take a look at them so we can kind of verify we're doing everything right. And then we will go from there. So anyways, that's the video that I had for you today. Thanks a lot for watching it.